In today's video, we are looking at Stalin's reaction to the Marshall Plan, and here's a little hint. He didn't like it very much. As per usual, we have three essential questions. The first, what is a satellite state? The second, how did the USSR take over so many Eastern European states? And the third, why did Stalin set up COMINFORM and COMECON? So, what is a satellite state? The most common understanding of the word satellite is that it is a piece of technology that orbits Earth and either collects data or helps us communicate. But when we use this word in a Cold War context, it describes the situation in Eastern Europe from 1947 to 1949, where Stalin had created governments in most Eastern European countries that were linked to the USSR. You can see all of the satellite states on this map. All of the light red countries are satellite states. So, officially, a satellite state is independent, but in practice, these states are controlled by another country, and in the Cold War's case, these governments are controlled by the USSR. Which brings us to wonder how the USSR gained control over these states. Stalin's takeover tactics have been named salami tactics. If you imagine a piece of salami, in order to consume it, you usually slice it bit by bit. This is a metaphor for how Stalin got rid of his opposition in Eastern European countries. The salami represents his opposition, and the slices represent how Stalin gets rid of them little by little. Different countries were taken over by different methods, but here are the basic steps to the USSR's takeover of power. The first step was that, after elections, the communist politicians in a country would share power with their opponents. The second step is that the communists would force their opponents out of power, after which they would outlaw these opposition parties, and finally they would execute their opponents. As I said, different countries were taken over through different methods. However, these are the basic steps for how communist politicians, who were collaborating with the USSR, gradually took control in different states. The next question one might have is, why did Stalin want satellite states? Stalin had many reasons for desiring them. First, he truly believed that communism was the best system, and therefore more countries should become communist. Second, Stalin desired security. After all of the European conflicts in the past half a century, like World War I and World War II, Stalin's like, hey guys, we need protection, and we can gain protection by having countries that are loyal to us surrounding our borders. And finally, Stalin believed that the Americans were trying to buy allies in Europe through Marshall aid. He called this dollar or economic imperialism. In effect, Stalin saw Marshall aid as making European countries dependent upon American aid and therefore allies of the USA. You can see that there are many reasons Stalin wants these satellite states. So, in response to Marshall aid, Stalin devised two new organizations. The first was called COMINFORM for short, which stood for Communist Information Bureau and was created in 1947. The second organization came about 2 years later and was called COMECON, the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance. So we can already see that one is about politics and the other economics. Let's look at COMINFORM more closely. This was a political organization with members from all communist parties in Europe. And by doing this, Stalin made sure that all communist parties were under the influence of the USSR. Now let's turn our attention to COMECON, which was an economic organization that aimed to encourage Eastern European economic development by preventing trade with the West. The red countries on this map were members of COMECON. So these were two of Stalin's answers to the Marshall Plan and Truman Doctrine. These plans helped create satellite states throughout Eastern Europe that were dependent upon the USSR both politically and economically. So, in summary, in today's video we learned that the USSR created satellite states throughout Eastern Europe from 1947 to 1949 by creating 1. COMINFORM and 2. COMECON. And finally, although I didn't explicitly mention it, the police and army, which helped get rid of opponents to communism. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.